Hey, this is Jonathan Gilliam. I'm about to start the show, and I'm going to give you your tasking for today, Wednesday, July 22nd, 2020. But just 2020. That word just sounds crazy, doesn't it? 2020, that number. Anyway, here's your tasking. I want you to do something today that you haven't done since you were a kid. You know, I was in the swimming pool earlier, and of course I did this a lot when I was in BUDS and SEAL training, but I just went underwater and held my breath for a while and to see how long I could hold my breath for. And the thing that was interesting when I was under there was that I was concentrating on doing that. And believe it or not, I enjoy being underwater. And I just forgot about everything for a minute. I was only concentrating on how long I was underwater. And all of a sudden it dawned on me, man, if I did more stuff like I did when I was a kid, I would forget about a lot of the stuff that's going on. And we really need that right now. So I don't know, pick something out, do something, whether it's making a peanut butter and jelly sandwich or whatever it would be. Maybe even making some Kool-Aid if you haven't had Kool-Aid in a long time. Whatever it is, do something that you did when you were a kid and just enjoy it for a minute and don't think about the world. And let's start the show. This is Jonathan Gilliam back in on the Experts Podcast. The truth has arrived. And that was the little monkey dog toy that was screaming there just a second ago. I'll do it again real quick. I thought it was nice to start that because the world is now like a jungle, it seems like. And, well, quite frankly, you wouldn't expect me to have a monkey sound at the beginning of the show. So we did it. And, today, it's funny because, believe it or not, most of the time when I host on radio or when I do my podcast, and now this is the 71st episode of the podcast, the Experts Podcast, but I also, for 2 years, hosted the video cast or video podcast, whatever you want to call it, of the Experts. And believe it or not, I rarely compile notes before the show. I may write an outline. I may just sit here for several hours and go through the news, or if I have something in particular that's kind of been weighing on my mind for the day. But the way my mind works is that I just typically, and when I give speeches, I don't know if you've watched the speeches that I give, only a couple of times have I ever really written an outline. And if I'm at a podium, it works out. You know, I'll have an outline and I'll follow that outline, but I don't usually write things down. But I've tried to do that before twice now when I'm out, like at a rally or something, and I try to have notes. It just doesn't work out. I end up putting those down and doing just fine. But the way my brain works is, I have a concept, a big picture of what I want to talk about, and then my brain is just really good at going through and discovering things as I speak. And when I say discovering things, taking my knowledge and experience and really figuring things out as I speak. And also verbalizing what I know in a language other than operator language, for instance, in the military or law enforcement field. When I speak to you, I don't really speak in those terms. I take those terms and I speak to you in a civilian manner. And so that's the way my brain works. And but today I actually wrote some stuff down because I'm seeing a picture, as always. I'm seeing a picture of things that are happening. And it's interesting because it's really starting to manifest itself, what's happening now. It's starting to manifest itself into a picture that is identifiable, and a lot of people don't understand exactly what's happening, and they think that this is all, I feel terrible because of the virus, and I feel like I don't have any life anymore, it's because of the virus. Or they feel like Black Lives Matter and this whole thing with George Floyd is just out of control, and the way that the world is inflamed right now is because of the racism that's rampant in the world. But listen, this is the reality, okay? The reality is that what I just stated is not the reality. The reality is that, and I'm going to cover this as I go through, that it's really the leadership that has been not just in this country. I talked about this a little bit yesterday, but it's really in the world. What is happening in the world, and in this global movement of communism. Now, communism isn't necessarily a word that's been around forever. And as I've stated before on this show and on other shows, I think that the movement that you see may be called communism or socialism or globalism or liberalism or progressivism, but it's really, when I sit and look at this, I see Satan. He's all over it. Because when you look at the way he's been portrayed throughout history in the Bible, and then also in other teachings, and I don't know if you've realized this, right? But in all religions around the world, there's always a deity. But by and large, most of the religions disagree on who the deity is and what they have to say, right? But one thing that I find very interesting, because people are going to get the truth wrong a lot when it comes to, see, here's the thing about a deity, right? And this is why I was always drawn, even as a young child, to the story of Jesus, because he wants you to be who you are, who you choose to be. All other religions, every single other religion, is about you being mandated to do a certain type of work in order to achieve enlightenment or to achieve righteousness, I guess you could say. And when it comes to Jesus, it's you be yourself, I pay the price, and you choose me. You choose to do good. You choose to believe in that sacrifice, right? There's no real work that you do. It's a choice. But ultimately, you are free to make that choice. But this is where the great discrepancy is, because people can easily be swayed by Jim Jones or different people like that that arise and use either other religions or make their stuff up and pressure people into believing this. But what is very interesting, so in other words, the deity may vary. It may vary. People may say, well, I feel this way. I just told you how I feel as a Christian. Other people may say, I feel differently. And so they choose their deity that way. But one thing that is very interesting is that the devil is the same in every religion. Now, that is very interesting when you think about it, because he is depicted as a liar. He's depicted as an enslaver, as somebody who is full of trickery and deceit and narcissism, as he's described in the Bible as the most beautiful creature ever made, the light bearer. That's what Lucifer means, the light bearer. And yet he is never happy with himself. He's consumed by himself, but he's consumed by himself in a quest to be God or to be greater than God. So when you look at the reality of what's happening in our nation and around the world, there is a movement that is spreading and has made attempts throughout history recorded that have the same goal and purpose. And that is a whimsical, magical utopia that is free of the government and one that in which the people take care of each other. And if you can work, you work, and if you need, then you take. Right? Sounds great. Sounds really great. It never worked. Never worked in history, unfortunately, because the reality is, in order to be that group of people where you work if you can work, and then if you're in need, you take, you have to be free. That's a choice. You have to be able to choose to be that way. If you are mandated to be that way, it's not freedom at all, and it's certainly not a utopia. And so when we look at the history of religions, there is that one common denominator. They all look at Satan the exact same way. And that's very telling, because people's pride a lot of the time and their own idea of what a deity is will lead them in a certain direction, right? So they feel like this is good, that the deity is my father or will take care of me. And so they draw this picture of who they think it should be. But when it comes to bad things, think about it. Most people are careful in the dark because they know in the dark there's things that they can't see. And that's the way they feel about bad. Everybody kind of sees it the same. There's very few people who, unless you're, an operator in the SEAL teams, or you're a cop that works the midnight shift, or you're a criminal, you don't particularly, care about being out and about and sneaking around and doing things in the dark, right? You see it as bad, or you see it as dangerous, and you see it as a time when you should be home. Almost everybody sees it that way. And it's the same way with the devil. Now, that being said, how do you face that? Because this is not something new. We can call it whatever you want to call it. If you want to call it communism, that's what a lot of the people that are involved in this movement will call it communism. They will call it, liberalism, or they'll call it socialism. That's really the catchphrase, is socialism. But the problem with how this is being handled, or the way it's being approached by those who do not believe in that, and those who want to be free, and those who were raised with a mind of humility and critical thinking. They're not going to see that as good. The problem is, I keep seeing these tweets and these Facebook posts about people saying that the silent majority will rise up, or in November, the silent majority will go to the polls. Well, therein lies the problem. Okay. The last time we had, in the United States, the last time we went to the polls for a general election for Congress, the Democrats, who are the leftists, they won because the silent majority, quote unquote, did not go to the polls. They did not rise up. And I keep seeing this over and over again, and I can't help but think that being a part of the silent majority is nothing to be proud of. You should not want to be silent. I mean, you are being silent right now while things are just disappearing at such an alarming rate as far as freedom goes, and oppression is rising at a massive rate for those who see things for the way that they are. You're being oppressed for that. Now, I'm no Q fan, okay? I've made that clear. I think the whole Q thing is a lie. At least the message that comes from wherever it comes from. What I will say this about Q people, though, although I think they're still being led astray, is it's the one place where I have seen people gather together in one mindset. I will say that look at themselves as patriots. Now, I'm a little bit leery of that, a lot of bit leery. I mean, there's been talks of, the Q phenomenon, and people are, in this big belief system of aliens. There's I think it's very easy to lead people astray and down a road of hope about the president, who I'm a supporter of President Trump, but it alludes to the fact that there's this big master plan, and that that we don't have anything to worry about. The plan is there, and you don't have to get up and get off your couch. The plan is there. It's going to work. That's a dangerous thing, because it keeps people from actually acting, and it keeps people believing that the silent majority is the sleeping giant. Well, I don't agree with any of that, and I have not hidden that at all. But I do not agree with Twitter banning today 7,000 Q followers on Twitter and monitoring or limiting something like 120,000 or more profiles that are Q followers. And I don't agree with that. I don't agree with it at all. I think that if people want to go down that road, then it's their road. Let them go down it. But the silent majority, and the way that the Q following has created this, or not created, it's furthered this concept of the silent majority. And some of the things that the QAnons or the Q group says or tweets or posts gets filtered into the regular conservative or constitutionalist type of population on social media. Absolutely the wrong thing to do. Right now, we are in such a predicament in this country. And there's no great master plan. I hate to break it to you. I spent a lot of time in the military and in law enforcement and in the government in general. There is no master plan. There wasn't one then. There's not one now. I think that's clear. Bill Barr, the Attorney General, Christopher Wray, the FBI Director, Durham, the U.S. Attorney that's supposedly handling the Russian case and all these things about the Clintons and stuff. I don't know if you realize there's not enough time for them to do anything before November. They've been literally punting the football for almost 3.5, almost 4 years, and they've done nothing. Folks, I have been a part of cases that took 5 years. Okay, they weren't my case, but I worked on those cases, and they were genuinely criminal enterprise or terrorism cases. And sometimes foreign counterintelligence. They're long, ongoing cases because there's a massive spider web, and then eventually they take those down, right? But these are criminal enterprises or terrorist organizations that work in secret. There is literally, I'm sure there's tons of secrets when it comes to the leftists in government who are not all in the Democrat Party. Many of them are in the Republican Party, believe it or not. I think you could see that with John McCain, with Comey, who they say is a Republican, and Mueller, who they say is a Republican. It's all a farce, okay? But regardless of whether it's Democrats or Republicans, I mean, mostly Democrats, but the reality is that this isn't being done in secret. It's not like a criminal enterprise or a terrorist group where they do all their stuff in secret. A lot, I'm not saying all, but I would say a lot of the things that have been done against this president before he was elected and during the election, where they attempted to overthrow the election. And then years before that, they didn't do things in secret. They didn't. Politics don't do these things in secret, and because they feel like they don't have anything to fear. Look at Cuomo in New York City, the governor of New York. He's locked everybody down. There's now 33 states out of all the states in the United States. There's 33 states that you're either prohibited from coming to New York, or you can come here, the tri-state, New York, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania. But once you come here, you have to quarantine for 14 days, self-quarantine, okay? If you fly here, you have to fill out paperwork before you get off the plane, saying where you're from and how long you're going to be here and what you're going to, and you have to say that you're going to self-quarantine for 14 days. Meanwhile, Cuomo goes down to Georgia because he feels like he had to have a For some reason, he had to go down there. He said that he doesn't have to quarantine because he says he's an essential worker, and it was necessary for him to go to Georgia. I mean, what was necessary? Why did he have to go to? I don't care what it was. Unless he had to go down there and literally physically pick something up and bring it back, there's no need for him to have gone there. But it's politics. And as I see these things, and I realize that, and also with the amount of people that they killed by their bad decisions, by putting COVID positive patients in elderly clinics, killed 60,000 or more that we know of. I'm just seeing the picture that the silent majority, quote unquote, is bad. The silent majority is not what you want to be. And you shouldn't be content with that. The silent majority, they're going to awaken a lion. No, they're not. Because the majority of people right now that are conservative, constitutionalists, I'll even throw libertarians in there, although don't get me started on that. We'll have a whole show on that. But you're doing nothing. There's little pockets of people here and there that do some things, but overall they're not doing anything. And now what I'm starting to find is that these rallies that they're having, which I spoke at one a couple of weeks ago that you might have seen where I posted the video of me talking about communism, which I've been talking about for years. A lot of these events that they're having are being organized by people who have political motivation. And that's not a good thing. Your motivation and anybody's motivation that wants to get one of these things going should be to do what's best for the country, period. And just getting people out there. There's a law enforcement thing that's this weekend. I'm not sure if I'm going to go to it or not, because the goal by the organizer is to get, fly celebrities in. That's the wrong thing. We don't need celebrities coming in. You're the celebrity, the silent majority, the sleeping giant. You should be showing up together in mass and stopping this stuff. That is I said this about Virginia when they went and they 20,000 strong, armed to the teeth, went and stood peacefully. That was a real peaceful protest, but they stood peacefully around the Virginia Capitol. I'm telling you, if you want to remove somebody from office, 20,000 people can do it. I mean, actually remove them from office. But that's the problem. This silent majority, this sleeping giant, is full of people who refuse to put themselves on the line. And so nothing is going to change. Anytime you've seen in history where the silent majority rose up, unfortunately, it followed oppression. The people were oppressed, and then they finally decided we're not taking it anymore. But you almost never see in history, very rarely, where people are free, enjoying life, and then all of a sudden, this leftist, and it keeps happening over and over again throughout history, this leftist ideology, this idea of a communal life, this whimsical fairy tale of a communal life seeps in, and it usually is accompanied by comfort, where people get too comfortable and they think that, they need to be taken care of, or I don't think I should have to work that much, or we should all be equal and you should hold your opinion because I don't feel that way. And only comfortable people think like that, right? If you are in a position where you are having to work for every calorie of food and every dollar bill that goes into your pocket and calorie that goes into your stomach, you're not going to be as concerned about what that guy over there says and that it offends you, because you're just trying to live. But when you get comfortable and you live in a society where There is plenty. Unfortunately, the side effect of that is comfort and laziness. And that's throughout history. That is where, well, there's two places actually where these types of leftists move in. On the mass, where they try to convince everyone that that this is the best way for everybody to be together. That really happens when things are great. But quite often when things are really, really bad, that's when the true coup d'etat happens. That's when the true tricksters, dictators, fascist leaders, that's where they come in. Because then they come in and they promise good things. See, one promises the people who were comfortable that they can do less and be taken care of. The other comes in when the people are suffering and convinces the people that if you follow me, I'll take care of you. This is what you need, and we'll make sure that you get it. And so it's similar in both circumstances. But ultimately, the silent majority fails every time until they're oppressed. Everything, and this is the other thing that's mind-boggling to me, every time in history, anything that's had any involvement with this communal type of groupthink or collectivism, this communistic type of mentality, everything that it has touched throughout history has been a disaster over and over and over again. And the big thing is, it's not a mystery. It's history. And it's shown that that's the way it is. Anytime this leftist ideology comes into play, it's going to come in through the young people every time, the most inexperienced ones of the citizenry. And that's where it gets its own validation. And it's historical. It's no mystery. But yet, again and again, the people that are fooled are the young and the comfortable. And yes, listen, there are people who are very poor in this country and in the world. The more, and I know this sounds very kind of brutal, but look, I grew up poor. I know what it's like to be when I mean poor, I'm talking pump water in a house. I know what it's like to be poor, to live in the middle of nowhere with nothing, no air conditioning, and it's so hot that you put a fan on and a sheet over the fan so it blows through the sheet, and you lay down on a tile floor just so you can feel something cool. I know what it's like. But the more you allow learned helplessness and a feeling of, if I don't work, they'll take care of me. Those people also, believe it or not, become spoiled into the believing that that is the way it is. It's learned helplessness. It all comes down to the fact that people are being told that they're going to be taken care of, and they believe it. They either believe it because they're poor and they have nothing, or because they have just enough. They have just enough to where they live a comfortable life and they don't want it disturbed. And they think, well, I work hard, I get a paycheck, but if somebody wants to give me something and take care of me, then I'm okay with that. All right, I'll pay more in taxes. Okay, I know they're Democrat, but I'm not going to raise a stink about it because they're probably not going to change my whatever your lie is. Okay, whatever the lie is, that is how a silent majority stays silent, because so many of them are compromised. They don't realize this stuff. They just go through life floating. Now, what we're seeing on a day-to-day basis is an in-your-face example of the ultimate narcissistic rise of human existence. I mean, this stuff has happened before. Trust me, you look at history, you'll see that it's happened before. But this is the ultimate. This is the ultimate because there was never social media. Social media is huge. Social media has caused narcissism to become an epidemic. And then you have media where people just stopped looking for the truth and they just take it at face value. Back in the day, if people didn't have street smarts, this was like when somebody would go around with snake oil telling you it cures everything and people just buy it. That's what they think that the news is. They think it's all telling. It's all the truth. It's not. Most of it's fake or misleading at best. But this narcissistic rise of human existence is grander than it's ever been. There's always been narcissistic leaders and oppressors, but now they have media, they have social media, they have their political parties, they have their big money people that are behind them, and they can perpetuate these lies to make them seem almost like back in the day of when they thought of gods and they thought of the immortals. This is very close to that. It's very close to that because people they almost look at these politicians as though they are something special, as though they are a higher breed of human, and that there's this thing called the law and the government, which separates them from us. And it's not true. It's absolutely fake. The whole thing's an illusion. The law, as it's written, the basis of the law, the foundation of the law, which was written in the Constitution and designed by the founding fathers. And remember this, if you remember anything else from this today, remember this. Our law comes from Moses' law. And Moses' law was designed as Moses led the Israelites through the desert for 40 years. The laws were made to keep them clean and healthy, to keep them on the right track of thought so that they could grow closer to God, and so that they could live together, move quickly when needed, and still be efficient and not run out of things like food and water, so that you could, that a large group of people could work together, live together without worry of sin or attack by enemy or breakdown from within. That's Moses' law. And ultimately, all the things that were there, and the reason they were journeying through the desert was because God was growing them. And when we look at the lie of communism, it's to make you think that that's what communism is all about, what I just described. It's not. It's a lie. Communism and the leftist ideology, and remember, you have to attach Satan to that. And it all comes back down to power, not power for you, power for them. And so the illusion of government is built under the same illusion of communism. They make you think that government, in the way that it exists now, is like Moses' law. It's there to take care of you. It's there to make sure that we all work together. It's there to make sure that you have the ability to have a walk with God and know God. It's there to ensure that the citizenry does not fall under disease, does not fall under the oppression of foreign leaders, or has a breakdown from within. But that is not what government has become. It most certainly does not protect us from disease. That's for sure. That's what we've definitely seen. In fact, according to the statistics that we have that we can believe, 5 governors are more dangerous than any virus. 5 governors killed over 60,000 people in these clinics. I'll mention that every day if I can, so people get it. Let's take a break real quick. We're going to come back, and I'm going to finish talking about Moses' law, but let's take a break real quick, and I want to tell you about my book, Sheep No More, The Art of Awareness and Attack Survival. We'll be right back. I know I talk a lot about my books on this show, but I just want to make sure that if you have not checked out Sheep No More, The Art of Awareness and Attack Survival, and it's 2 workbooks that go with it, that you at least go check it out. You can go on and listen to the first, 2 minutes of it on Amazon if you just click on listen here, and you can at least hear what I'm saying. The important thing that you have to take away from this is that this book, like no other, is going to show you how attackers look at you and teach you how to look at yourself the same way, how to divide your life into sectors, how to target each sector with that knowledge and understanding, those tactics, techniques, and procedures. And then the workbooks allow you to do your own threat assessment on every aspect of your life, and then take that information and put it into the defense assessment workbook. Now, along with that, I designed, along with Danielle Kreiner, a children's book called The Adventures of Team Little Bigs, a parent's book for children. And it's a book of pictures that you can give your child, and in the pictures are embedded security, safety, awareness, and communication lessons. And the parent, you can go to teamlittlebigs.com and download the lesson plans. So what you literally have is a way to teach your child non-verbally. They can sit there and look at the books, and you can point to those pictures and really start them off at a very, very young age, helping them to understand what they should do, what they shouldn't do, and how to communicate these things. Sheep No More, The Art of Awareness and Attack Survival was written for, I would say, people 10 years and up. Definitely for an adult to understand the world that they live in. And The Adventures of Team Little Bigs, a parent's book for children, was written with those children in mind, so we can start them out young to understand what they need to do to stay safe and how to communicate these things. Trust me, folks, I did this for you, and I hope that you'll go check them out, because this is how you secure your homeland. The Adventures of Team Little Bigs and Sheep No More. Go get them. And let's get back to the show. These leaders do not fall under Moses' law and the rationalization of the laws under Moses. They fall under a more of a monarch type of mindset, or a dictator type of mindset. I think this is best. You will do it. I'm going to order it. I'm going to mandate it. You will do it. Now, along with that are these ideologies. And these ideologies that are springing up and that have been around, they're just being repeated over and over again, are really the tools of control. These leaders, and I'm talking about mayors, governors, city council, judges, local, state, and federal, sheriffs, people who are elected, they have started to align themselves in political parties, of course. Not just started, they've been doing that. But also now with ideologies. I mean, the Republican Party, who I'm very critical of. I'm a conservative guy. I'm a constitutionalist. But the Republican Party has aligned itself with the ideology of the Constitution and conservatism, right? Okay. But they don't necessarily believe in that, because if the Republican Party, as we know it, the actual party, not the people, I'm talking about the makeup, the politicians, those who run the Republican Party, if they truly believed ideologically in the Constitution, we would be in a civil war already, and they would be requesting that the military support their side in support of the Constitution, and that law enforcement and all people that believe in the Constitution follow them in the battle against the left. That is not happening. It's not happening to the point where it's actually supporting, in a lot of ways, the leftist movement, because they never stand their ground. They always compromise their ground. And when you look at the left, you look at the Democrat Party, it just purely leftist. It is ideologically based, and that ideology is what they use as the greater tool of oppression. Even the people that believe in the left in this country are being brutalized by the lie that it is through the cancel culture, for instance. There are people that are leftist that have said stuff before it became unpopular, and now they're suffering because of it. Not because it wasn't funny, like if they were a comedian or they talked about stereotypes, which, having lived in New York City for 15 years, most stereotypes are true. That's why comedians are so funny a lot of the times. And these stereotypes, by and large, come from cultural differences. Of course, they blow them up and they make them look like they're more than they are. But most stereotypes, and now I'm talking about comedians, I'm not talking about racism, I'm not talking about bigots, I'm talking about typical stereotypes, okay? And no, I'm not going to say them because I'm not going to be that guy where they have a soundbite off my podcast and play it later on. But I do believe, I don't think I believe it, it's just a fact. You go to a comedy show and they rag on people of different cultures, races, religions. They have stereotypes that can be exploited for hilarity, for comedy. Now, that was in the past, not now. But when we look at how the left was part of that, they're all being crushed now. So it does work against their own at times, because ultimately those people are useful idiots anyway, and these leaders, quote unquote leaders, who are the oppressors, they don't really care about them anyway. I mean, de Blasio would turn on anybody if it would help his career. Hitler is a perfect example of this. Everybody that worked around Hitler, you see him in all the videos, they are kissing his backside like crazy. And wherever he goes, they go, because they know they're shining too. But they also know if they cross him or they say something that he doesn't agree with, they're done. He'll just get rid of them. That's the way. You think the people who run Black Lives Matter care about black people? They don't. What they care about is black separation and power for themselves. And it's clearly evident they don't do anything to stop black on black violence. And black people who oppose things like defunding the police or black people who are conservative immediately become a target of Black Lives Matter because it doesn't fit in their ideology and it goes against their oppressive nature, and that's how they gain power. It's pressure or oppression through trickery to make people think that this is, like there's systematic racism everywhere. It permeates everything. Listen, if we were to believe what they're saying, and you were to believe all these apologetic CEOs, every single company, every branch of the government, every agency, every neighborhood was just rampant with systematic racism, worse than it was in the 60s or worse than it was in the 1800s or 1700s. And shame on these people for believing, and I've said this before, those individuals that were slaves until true equal rights occurred in this nation, Those people who were enslaved and those people who had to go to a different water fountain, or those people that had to go to a different bathroom because of the color of their skin, those people paid a price. That's why John Lewis, who I couldn't stand as a politician, I thought he was worthless and really sided with communists, which is terrible. I thought John Lewis, I can't criticize that guy. I mean, I hold him in high esteem for what he did with Martin Luther King Jr. They were in the fight. They had themselves and others in their families who had been really oppressed, truly oppressed for the color of skin. But, just like when it comes to torture versus enhanced interrogation, I don't want John McCain's opinion about that. I didn't want it then, because somebody who's been tortured is not the person that you want trying to set the legality for how we should interrogate people. I mean, there's a clear definition for what terrorism is, and once you venture into that area, I think it's very clear. Anybody that does interrogation, which I've been trained in interrogation, and those who actually carried out advanced interrogation, which included physical harm, or not just necessarily physical harm, but coercive games, which anybody who's interviewed or interrogated somebody in law enforcement has played games with the person. Legally played these games, but I don't want John McCain's opinion on that. We should be able to figure it out because their opinion is injured. And the reason I even bring that up is the fact that somebody like John Lewis, who did what he did back in the 60s and was one of the groundbreakers along with Martin Luther King Jr., from that point forward, when he got in the 70s, when he got into government, he ended up going left. Well, I don't know. He may have been a leftist way before that, but whenever he stood for a point or an ideology, it was always with the left. And so it's dangerous when somebody who has actually been oppressed, when they get into government, because of what they've been through, quite often they can be snowed into believing that this person has their best interest at heart, or that person is telling me what I want to hear, so let's go with them. And it, in fact, may be the wrong way to go. So these leaders are really oppressors. These ideologies are their tools. And they push groupthink, the collective thought. And that is rampant in this country. And that's why I was saying what I was saying earlier about the QAnon group. I don't believe that they should be censored on Twitter, but at the same time, those people that I know that are patriots, you should take a step back and realize you are a part of a collective thought. That's a dangerous place to be, because if they tell you what you want to hear, you are going to be led astray. Like sitting on your couch and repeating that there's this great master plan when there is no great master plan. And I don't want to see you all fail. I don't want to see you be proven wrong. I don't want to be the person that says, I told you so. I want you to be smart enough to figure it out and stop looking for people to tell you what you want to hear. I don't care what you say, and you don't know, you didn't read the Q proofs, and it predicted this and that. Listen, anybody that's worked in and around government can predict a whole hell of a lot of stuff. It doesn't take a lot of years of experience in government to see how governments work and to forward think stuff that's going to happen. The government works in a very, very, I don't want to use the word specialized, but it's not hard to figure it out once you've worked in there. They don't exactly think outside the box. As I mentioned in Sheep No More, The Art of Awareness and Attack Survival, my best-selling book, I got bitched out by a senior agent once because he said, you know what your problem is? 90% of what you do is outside the box. This is the FBI. We think inside the box. I told him that was the greatest compliment I've ever had. And that wasn't long before I left. I knew right then and there that was not the place for me, if that was the case. They don't think outside the box. Not in that environment. But what you have to realize is individuals, you yourself, you may believe in this movement or that movement. You may be left or you may be conservative and right. But you are making decisions emotionally. You have to get away from that. Because what you end up seeing is that, the term emotionally disturbed, that disturbance is what is another way for them to control you. Get you all up in arms, get you depressed, get you angry, and then get you to rally. That's the way that works. Self-centeredness. My gosh, people are more self-centered now than they've ever been because of social media, because they don't really have to face reality. Am I capable of working and growing a garden and plowing a field? If everything goes away and the electricity turns off, am I actually capable of taking care of myself and my family? Self-centered people don't even look down. They don't even think about that. They think I've got this can of beans in front of me and I've got water that comes out of that faucet when I turn it on. It's too hot in here. I turn the air conditioner on. It's a very self-centered way to exist, thinking that it's just going to last. Why? Because I live in America. Wrong. People are scared. They're scared now. These are all the characteristics of what's happening with individuals. You see, you have the leaders, the oppressors, the ideologies, that's their tools, the groups, which include and encourage the collective thought, and the individuals who are emotionally disturbed now. They're self-centered, scared, boastful. They love to be noticed. And ultimately, they're puppets. I mean, we have all become that way to an extent. Everyone. I can go on Instagram or Facebook or Twitter, and I can put everyone into, 5 or 6 categories. Everybody, even the patriots, love my coffee, Patriot coffee, whatever it is. I'm a veteran, and I have a huge beard. I guess I fall into that category. It's everybody aligns themselves with a category. Even the people who say they don't align themselves with a category, I could find 50 of them, 1,000, 10,000, just like them, saying the same exact thing. Why? Because the leaders who are the oppressors utilize their ideologies. Churches have been compromised. Government agencies have been compromised. Media is compromised. Social media has been compromised from the beginning. Everything that you are taught, everything that you see, it puts you in a category. And you become puppets to this. And that's what's occurring. That's why it's so easy. That's why this is all happening so fast. This learned behavior. All of these are learned behaviors. And I tweeted this out a little while ago. No one wants to be a slave except the people that mistake being enslaved for being included in the collective. And that's absolutely true. People are comfortable. They are comfortable being enslaved. I'll just stay on unemployment. What are you going to do now that you don't have a job? I'm going on unemployment. I've never been on unemployment. And I've been in points in my life where I didn't have a job and I was seeking employment somewhere. And there were times when I took what I had to take. Didn't like it, but I did it. Everybody has to realize what is happening in the U.S. is happening everywhere. It's not just here. But it is this pattern that is reoccurring over and over and over. That's why I started in the beginning to talk about Satan. Because this is not a one-off. It's not just happening here. As I told you yesterday, I was part of a little group discussion panel with 3 parliament members from Italy. And they're saying the same exact thing as everyone else. It's just people look at it from a different angle. But this movement that's occurring, it's happening quickly because it's coordinated, and it's using you and the category that they can put you in, and you're being puppeteered, whether you realize it or not. I'm an angry patriot. I'm part of the silent majority, the sleeping giant. Guess what? You've been convinced that. Why would you want to be a sleeping majority? Why wouldn't you get together and get up off your ass and go do something and stop this before it happens? Because you've been convinced that I work for a living, or I'm not going to get in trouble. You know, if every state trooper in New York said, I'm not guarding Cuomo. This guy is crazy. He's dangerous. And he's committed murder. And they got together, every state trooper in New York State, and said, we got to arrest Cuomo. Who's going to stop them? I'm telling you what would happen, especially if they put out a press release. We want every New Yorker to come to Albany, State Police of New York. If you're a patriot, get to Albany, and then arrest him. Guess what? 50,000 people show up. 1 million. He's going to jail, or he's at least not going back into the Capitol building. But that's not going to happen. There's no real truth about the virus. We don't know what the truth is about the virus, okay? That is in part because of people like Cuomo. It's because of the media, because of the quote-unquote leaders in this country. I've said this over and over again. If you can look at something like a virus and you can say, and what you feel about it is broken down on party lines, you know you're being played. And that's what's happened. It's not like liberals and conservatives believe the same thing about wearing a mask, for instance. I mean, I'm conservative, but I do believe that you should wear a mask when you go out in public. If anything, it slows down the spread. I don't know. I know that doctors and nurses wear masks and they're healthy. And I know that how germs, spread and how viruses spread. And if the worst thing is wearing a mask, well, then I'm going to wear a mask. I mean, if that's the worst thing I have to worry about, I'm wearing a mask. I'm not going to worry about it. But I don't know if you've realized this. It's broken down between party lines on who wants to and who doesn't want to. It's a narrative. And it's ideological narrative. Well, I'm not wearing a mask because I'm free. Has nothing to do with freedom. Has to do with responsibility. And people will probably be listening to this that are conservative saying, well, you're going off the deep end on this one. No, I'm not. I'm just saying, if I feel like I need to wear a mask for general safety and the safety of others, even if it's just a little bit, I'll put on a mask. I'm not a slave to the mask. But I'm also not going to make an opinion on the mask based on what conservative leaders say or what the conservative groupthink says. Just like in the beginning, when I had the virus and I saw these people like Candace Owens tweeting out about how this virus was nothing and this is a joke and we need to let everybody go back to work. This is when we first quarantined, okay? I was against that. I didn't like that speech. I thought it was stupid because, and I still believe now, you have to try what you can when it comes to a virus or an unknown. And if quarantining for a month or 2 months and then wearing a mask is the way you do it, then that's the way we do it. We at least try it. But going out and jumping on a party line and saying, no, because that's your narrative, I don't agree with that. And like now, we have seen there's evidence that shows that quarantining did little. It slowed down. It stopped people from getting it for a period of time. But as soon as you open it back up, that virus is still there. It's everywhere. And people are going to get it again. So obviously quarantining doesn't work. Now I'm making the decision. I may be saying the same thing that they were saying before, but I'm not saying it because of a political line. I'm saying it because the country is going to collapse, which I've been saying that for a long time. The country is going to collapse financially if we don't start getting people back to work. People spent their entire lives developing companies or businesses and they've lost them. We've got to get people back to work. And if millions of people perish, I can guarantee you this. Well, first of all, that's not the case. It's not happening. Millions of people in the United States are not perishing. But it doesn't matter, because if we don't have a vaccine, we can't stop it anyway. You cannot stop this if you do not have a vaccine, and you cannot quarantine your way out of it. But the point of the whole thing is that these oppressive leaders, they're not taking these things into account. They just simply believe that this is what I think you should do it. And then they can mandate, or they can pass an order, or order you and then pass a law. And it's an oppressive way to lead. And it's really done nothing. Nothing that they've done so far has stopped the virus from spreading. Nothing. So when we look at what is happening around the world with the virus, it's exactly the way I'm talking about everything else. The language, the oppressive nature, the ideological maneuvering, and the laws and the mandates that they're putting in place are the exact same based on party lines all around the world. That just tells me that there's a hierarchy. And you should see that. There's a hierarchy in this whole thing. Now, I don't like being treated like a child, and I'm sure the majority of you do not either, unless you sold yourself into an ideological left mindset, or you're poor and you just don't want to make you want the handout that you're going to get, or you don't want to make trouble because you don't want to be in trouble. And so you're going to be treated like a child, and you're going to be comfortable with that. I'm not comfortable with that. And that's the whole thing. We're being treated like, not led. These leaders, they're not leading us. They're treating us like children, like we have to be told what to do. They mandate instead of request. If they asked, and I want you to think about this, the president did this today. He said he wants you to wear a mask when you go out in public, if you go around large groups of people. He's requesting that you do that. How do you feel about that? I feel pretty darn good about it. If the president, who I support, says, I think this is what we should do, then I'm going to give it my all. Now, I've served in the military and law enforcement, and so I have a team player type of attitude, and I also believe in this commander-in-chief, so I'm going to follow what he says. What do you think? I would hope that you would be saying, all right, listen, if it's worth even a try, let's give it a good try and wear a mask. This show is not about me pumping up wearing a mask, by the way. I don't give two shits what you do. Quite frankly, I don't. And if you get the virus, whatever, I had it. I'm not worried about it. But choosing that to be your hill to die on, you're a puppet. And you're making that decision based on a ideological bend that somebody's put on the Constitution. Well, you're wrong, Jonathan. I thought this through myself. No, you haven't. No, you haven't. You've been on social media too much. Well, they didn't do that in 1918. Yeah, they did. They had the same arguments. And I've seen tons of pictures and research and watched the documentaries. They're wearing masks. Signs that say wear a mask. But requesting is a big difference from mandating. And I'm okay with requesting. They order us to do things for our safety, as I pointed out earlier with Cuomo, while they do the opposite. You must quarantine if you go to Georgia and come back. For 14 days, you must self-quarantine. Meanwhile, the governor goes there, Cuomo, and comes back, doesn't quarantine. That tells a tremendous amount about who he is. He considers himself on a different level, as does his brother. They like to order instead of request. You know what? That's all my notes. So I think what we'll do is, I hope you got what I'm trying to say out of this. Ultimately, it's this. Don't be a monkey. This is the truth. You are being ordered, you're being mandated to do things that you could be requested to do if we had leaders in office. The president has requested that you wear a mask when you go into public. He didn't order it, and he said he's not going to order it. That's the sign of a true leader. You look at the Democrat leaders, not only in this country, the liberal leaders all around the world, they mandate, they order, they pass laws so you don't have a choice. You know how all this stops? It stops when the silent majority stops being silent. I'm Jonathan Gilliam. This is The Experts. The truth has arrived. Peace, and we're out here.